All right. Can you hear me at the back? Should I start again? You can hear me? Good. All right. So, can insects feed the world? Honestly, no. That's a crazy thought. Food security, global hunger is a nearly intractable issue. But can the careful cultivation of insects decrease hunger around the world, address food security, enable empowerment for women, and create economic stability for smallholder farmers? Absolutely, definitely can. So before we dig into why insects, let's just look briefly at the idea of the global situation around hunger. So right now, there are a lot of people on the planet, and a lot of us are hungry. And according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, we're looking at about 11 to 12% of people who don't get enough calories to maintain their basic energy requirements day to day. So when you think about this essentially just means that the food for them is either not available, it's just not there, or they can't afford it. So the solution would be then to just make the food available and affordable. Oh, that didn't sound good. And this is actually something we're getting reasonably good at. If you look at India spending $12 billion providing rice to its population. Mexico has the National Crusade Against Hunger. They're providing food. So we're actually getting better at this. But if you look at the food that we're providing, if you go around the world, it's often tortillas or rice or ugali. And it provides calories for sure. It's high carb, but it's very low nutrient. And if you end up in a situation where people are getting this high carb, low nutrient diet, they end up malnourished. And malnourishment leads to wasting, impairment, cognitive impairment, as well as physical impairments, stunting, illness. And the consequence of this is that, there's a huge opportunity cost for the economies involved. So if we're talking about building a global startup culture, if we go to, say, the Democratic Republic of Congo, somebody who's hungry today is not going to be an effective entrepreneur 20 years from now, and they're going to be underperforming 40 years from now. So if we want to address this and really build the potential for innovation globally, we need to start addressing this. So we need to make nutritious food available. And that's what the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has determined, that really the focus should be on safe, secure, sufficient food, nutritious food for everybody. So with that in mind then, what's the food going to be? The reveal is more exciting if you don't remember the first slide. Insects. So why insects? Are insects good for you? Are they a decent food? Insects go beyond being a decent food. Insects are a great food. Insects are spectacular for you. If you compare them pound for pound or kilogram for kilogram with beef, you get roughly equivalent amounts of protein, but considerably more iron, more calcium, more magnesium, more nutrients. And a lot of these nutrients are specifically those that people are incredibly low in developing countries. So insects are good for you. Will people actually eat them? Yeah. I'm sure there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.1 billion people around the world who eat insects, including myself, and I'm sure some people in this room have eaten insects. Anybody eaten insects here? Put up your hands if you've eaten insects before. There's got to be a couple people. Okay, not a lot of people. Hopefully we'll change that. So there are about 2.1 billion people who eat insects. About 400 million of them are food insecure, and of those, about 190 million live in urban and peri-urban environments. And if we go and look at the specific markets, we go around the world, we find that people are actually genuinely spending significant sums of money on insects. And there are people who really genuinely believe that insects are a legitimate food source. So if you look at the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, they released a report in last year saying that really we should all consider eating insects. And then just a few months ago, there was a big conference. 400 people from around the world, from industry around the world, came together to talk about insects as food. So it's definitely a viable model. And And so sorry, the problem is, the question is, with insects being good for you, with insects being desired around the world, with people being willing to pay for insects, why then is there a food insecurity issue? And that gets down to the nature of insects and markets. So I don't know if you guys remember being kids, running around fields, trying to catch grasshoppers with your hands, because I remember doing that. And you can catch one or two, but trying to catch enough grasshoppers to fill a plate takes a whole lot of work. And that's how most insects are caught. So if you're busily doing that, you're going to end up having to charge a significant amount for your insects if you're going to make any sort of living wage. And so insects are always really expensive. And add to that even if you can afford insects, they're usually seasonal. There's a species of insect in Africa that is incredibly popular and is only available for about 1 week out of the entire year. And the rest of the time, even if you want it, you just can't get it. In fact, everywhere I've been in the world, our team's been all over the world looking at this, I have not found a place anywhere in the world where insects cost less than chicken or beef. So this is not a food for the poor, this is food of the middle class. It's a delicacy almost everywhere. So what's the solution? Farm them. Bring industrial, modern farming techniques to the production of insects, and you'll increase the supply, and it'll be available around the world in a year-round manner. So let's talk about how to do this specifically. Aspire, the company that I founded with some friends, seeks to bring insects to people around the world in developing countries. So we're working in Mexico, and we're working in West Africa as well. So the Aspire model, we start with the hub in the middle, and the hub farms insects in an industrial way, in a way with economies of scale that farmers simply can't match. Then we provide the eggs to rural farmers, and they produce the insects themselves. Then we aggregate the insects at the hub, we process them and distribute them both to slums, but also as upmarket products as well. And to give you an idea of how this would work, we can look at Neza. Neza is the biggest slum in the world. It's outside of Mexico City. And it's got this double burden of food insecurity and where people are both malnourished and obese at the same time. We can look at Julieta, who we met in Neza. She was about 6 months pregnant when we met her. She has 3 kids. She has a tiny food budget. And every now and then, about once a week, she decides to splurge and get some chaplinas, the grasshoppers that are popular in Mexico. And she spends about 50 cents American, gets this tiny little bit of grasshoppers and feeds it to her family. Now, we project that we can drop the price by industrially farming them to about 1/3, which triples the amount of insects she can buy, which triples the amount of iron that she gets, and iron deficiency anemia is a huge problem in developing countries. So this is the model that we're using. We're not alone. People all over the world are doing this. But we took this idea to the Clinton Global Initiative and the Holt Prize, and they backed us to the tune of $1 million. And so we're taking that money and moving forward and expanding around the world. We're not alone. In South Africa, there's a company called AgriProtein. They're breeding the black soldier fly, and they're producing feed. And so feed is very expensive, especially the protein supplements for feed. It's got from bone meal or blood meal. And so using insects, you can do this far more efficiently, drop the cost of feed, which drops the cost of other protein, chicken, and other protein for people as well. I was going to put up a slide that talks about the giant cockroach market in China, but a couple million cockroaches just escaped from their farm and ran riot over a neighborhood, so I'll spare you the grisly details. But even in the United States, insects are becoming quite popular. There's companies popping up every couple months, and so if you want insects, you're going to be able to find them. This really is a growing concern. Now, beyond just food security and flavor, and insects taste great, by the way. I've had, not all insects taste great, but not all beef tastes great, not all chicken tastes great. But they really, you can find some extraordinary flavors. But beyond just this, there are other really material reasons to consider shifting at least some of your diet over to insects. So we go around the world, we see that we're losing arable land, the population is exploding, we're going to have less arable land, but 2 million more people over the next few decades Food prices are continuously going up. Everybody's moving to the cities. You're getting these huge population densities in the cities, which cause all sorts of problems, not around just food production, but food distribution. And insects really help us address this, because if we look at the production of insects and compare them to production of beef, insects use very little land, or for a given parcel of land, you can produce 10 times as much insect protein as you can beef protein. It requires almost no water. And so you look at so many of the places in the world that are underproductive agriculturally, they're in semi-arid zones, great place to raise insects. They require very little feed, and the feed they do require is often side stream feed. So it's not stuff that we'd normally feed to humans, unlike in industrial cattle farming, where we feed the cattle food that really could be fed to humans. And the greenhouse gas one is exciting. Crickets are non-ruminant species, so they produce virtually zero CO2 compared to cattle, and no methane. And methane really is the big greenhouse gas production from cows. So I'd like to bring us back to the little friend that I showed you at the beginning. Hopefully he's looking a little bit more attractive. And as you guys get ready to see our competitors come up and speak about other possible innovative food solutions, I want you to be open-minded to the idea that there are a lot of different ways of thinking about food other than those we're traditionally used to. Thanks so much.